War Horse by Michael Morpurgo. First published, Great Britain, 1982. Edgemont, UK Limited. Chapter 17. It was only with the greatest difficulty that I stayed standing on my 3 good legs in the veterinary wagon that carried me that morning away from the heroic little Welshman who had brought me in. A milling crowd of soldiers surrounded me to cheer me on my way, but out on the long rattling roads I was very soon shaken off my balance and fell in an ungainly, uncomfortable heap on the floor of the wagon. My injured leg throbbed terribly as the wagon rocked from side to side on its slow journey away from the battlefront. The wagon was drawn by 2 stocky black horses, both well groomed out and immaculate in well-oiled harness. Weakened by long hours of pain and starvation, I had not the strength even to get to my feet when I felt the wheels below me running at last on smooth cobblestones, and the wagon came to a jerking standstill in the warm, pale autumn sunshine. My arrival was greeted by a chorus of excited neighing, and I raised my head to look. I could just see over the sideboards a wide, cobbled yard with magnificent stables on either side and a great house with turrets beyond. Over every stable door were the heads of inquisitive horses, ears pricked. There were men in khaki walking everywhere, and a few were running now towards me, one of them carrying a rope halter. Unloading was painful, for I had little strength left in my legs, and they had gone numb after the long journey. But they got me to my feet and walked me backwards gently down the ramp. I found myself the centre of anxious and admiring attention in the middle of the courtyard, surrounded by a cluster of soldiers who inspected minutely every part of me, feeling me all over. "What in thunder do you think you're about, you lot?" came a booming voice echoing across the courtyard. It's an horse just like the others." A huge man was striding towards us, his boots crisp on the cobbles. His heavy red face was half hidden by the shade of his peaked cap that almost touched his nose, and by a ginger moustache that spread upwards from his lips to his ears. "It may be a famous horse, it may be the only thundering horse in the old thundering war brought in alive from no man's land, but it is only an horse, and a dirty horse at that. I've had some rough-looking specimens brought in here in my time, but this is the scruffiest, dirtiest, muddiest horse I have ever seen. He is a thundering disgrace, and you're all stood about looking at him." He wore 3 broad stripes on his arm, and the creases in his immaculate khaki uniform were razor-sharp. "Now, there's 100 or more sick horses here in this hospital, and there's just 12 of us to look after 'em. This here young layabout was detailed to look after this one when he arrived, so the rest of you blighters can get back to your duties. Move it, you idle monkeys, move it!" And the men scattered in all directions, leaving me with a young soldier, who began to lead me away towards a stable. "And you," came the booming voice again, "Major Martin will be down from the house in 10 minutes to examine that horse. Make sure that horse is so thundering clean and so thundering shiny so you could use him as a shaving mirror. Right?" "Yes, Sergeant," came the reply. A reply that sent a sudden shiver of recognition through me. Quite where I had heard that voice before, I did not know. I knew only that those 2 words sent a tremor of joy and hope and expectation through my body, and warmed me from the inside out. He led me slowly across the cobbles, and I tried all the while to see his face better. But he kept just that much ahead of me, so that all I could see was a neatly shaven neck and a pair of pink ears. "How the devil did you get yourself stuck out in that no-man's land, you old silly?" he said. "That's what everyone wants to know ever since a message came back that they'd be bringing you in here. And how the devil did you get yourself in such a state? I swear there's not an inch of you that isn't covered in mud or blood. Job to tell what you look like under all that mess. Still, we'll soon see. I tie you up there, and I get the worst of it in the open air. Then I'll brush you up in the proper manner afore the officers get here. Come on, you old silly, you. Once I've got you cleaned up, and then the officer can see you, and he'll tidy up that nasty cut of yours. Can't give you food, I'm sorry to say, nor any water, not till he says so. That's what the sergeant told me. That's just in case they got to operate on you." And the way he whistled as he cleaned out the brushes was the whistle that went with the voice I knew. It confirmed my rising hopes, and I knew then that I could not be mistaken. In my overwhelming delight, I reared up on my back legs and cried out to him to recognise me. I wanted to make him see who I was. Hey, careful there, you silly. Nearly had my hat off, he said gently, keeping a firm hold on the rope and smoothing my nose as he always had done whenever I was unhappy. No need for that, you'll be all right. Lots of fuss about nothing. Knew a horse like you just once, I did. Proper jumpy he was till I got to know him, and he got to know me.
You talking to them horses again, Albert? Came a voice from inside the next stable. Goldstruth, what makes you think they understand a perishing word you say?
Well, some of them may not, David, said Albert, but one day, one of them will. He'll come in here, and he'll recognise my voice. He's bound to come in here, and then you'll see a horse that understands every word that's said to him.
Well, you're not on about your Joey again.
The head that came with the voice leant over the stable door. Won't you ever give it up, Bertie? I have told you before, if I've told you 1,000 times. They say that there's near 500,000 ruddy horses out there, and you join the veterinary corps just on the off chance you might come across him. I pawed the ground with my bad leg in an effort to make Albert look at me more closely, but he just patted my neck and set to work cleaning me up.
There's just one chance in 500,000 that your Joey will walk in here. You've got to be more realistic. He could be dead. A lot of them are. He could have gone off to ruddy Palestine with the yeomanry. He could be anywhere along hundreds of miles of trenches. If you weren't so ruddy good with horses, and if you weren't the best friend I have, I think you'd gone a bit screwy the way you go on about your Joey.
You'll understand why when you see him, David, Albert said, crouching down to scrape the caked mud off of my underside. You'll see there's no horse like him anywhere in the world. He's a bright red bay with a black mane and tail. He had a white cross on his forehead and 4 white socks that are all even to the last inch. He stands over 16 hands, and he's perfect from head to tail. I can tell you that when you see him, you'll know him. I could pick him out of a crowd in 1,000 horses. There's just something about him. Captain Nichols, you know him. He's dead now, of course. That one I told you about that brought Joey from my father. Him that sent me Joey's picture. He knew it. He had seen it. He saw it the first time he set eyes on him. I'll find him, David. That's what I came all this way for, and I am going to find him. Either I find him, or he'll find me. I told you, I made him a promise, and I'm going to keep it.
You're round a ruddy twist, Bertie, said his friend, opening a stable door and coming over to examine my leg. Round a ruddy twist, that's all I can say.
He picked up my hoof and lifted it gently.
Well, this one's got a white sock on his front legs anyway. That's as far as I can tell under all this blood and mud. I'll just sponge the wound away a bit, clean it up for you whilst I'm here. You'll never get this one cleaned up in time else. Besides, I've finished mucking out the ruddy stables now. Not a lot else to do, and it looks like you could do with hand. Old Sergeant Thunder won't mind, not if I've done all he told me to, and I have.
The 2 men worked tirelessly on me, scraping and brushing and washing. I stood, quite still, trying only to nuzzle Albert to make him turn and look at me. But he was busying at my tail and my hindquarters now.
3, said his friend, washing off another one of my hooves. That's 3 white socks, that is.
Turn it up, David, said Albert. I know what you think. I know everyone thinks. I'll never find him. There's thousands of army horses with 4 white socks. I know that. But there's only one with a blaze in the shape of a cross on the forehead. And how many horses shine red like fire in the evening sun? I tell you, there's not another one like him, not in the whole wide world.
4, said David. That's 4 legs and 4 white socks. Only the cross on the forehead now, and a splash of red paint on this muddy mess of an horse, and you'll have your Joey standing right here.
Don't tease, said Albert quietly. Don't tease, David. You know how serious I am about Joey. It'll mean all the world to me to find him again. The only friend I ever had afore I came to war. I told you, I grew up with him, I did. The only creature on this earth I felt any kinship for. David was standing now by my head. He lifted my mane and brushed gently at first, and then vigorously at my forehead, blowing the dust away from my eyes. He peered closely, and then set to again, brushing down towards the end of my nose and up again between my ears, till I tossed my head with impatience.
Bertie, he said quietly, I'm not teasing. Honest, I'm not now. You said your Joey had 4 white socks, all even to the inch, right?
Right, said Albert, still brushing away at my tail.
And you said your Joey had a white cross on his forehead?
Right, said Albert, still completely disinterested.
Now, I have never seen a horse like that, Bertie, said David, using his hand to smooth down the hair on my forehead. Wouldn't have thought it possible.
Well, it is, I tell you, said Albert sharply, and he was red, flaming red in the sunlight, like I said.
I wouldn't have thought it possible, his friend went on, keeping his voice in check. Not until now, that is. Oh, pack it in, David, Albert said, and there was a genuine irritation in his voice now. I told you, haven't I? I told you I am serious about Joey. So am I, Bertie. Dead serious. No messing. I'm serious. This horse has got 4 white socks, all evenly marked like you said. This horse has got a clear white cross on his head. This horse, as you can see for yourself, has a black mane and a tail. This horse stands over 16 hands, and when he's cleaned up, he'll look pretty as a picture. And this horse is a red bay under all that mud, just like you said, Bertie. As David was speaking, Albert suddenly dropped my tail and moved slowly around me, running his hand along my back. Then at last we stood, facing one another. There was a rougher hue to his face, I thought. He had more lines around his eyes, and he was a broader, bigger man in his uniform than I remembered. But he was my Albert, and there was no doubt about it. He was my Albert. "Joey?" he said tentatively, looking into my eyes. "Joey?" I tossed my head and called out to him in my happiness, so that the sound echoed around the yard and brought horses and men to the door of their stables. "It could be," Albert said quietly. "You're right, David, it could be him. It sounds like him, even. But there's one way to know to be sure." And he untied my rope and pulled the halter off of my head. Then he turned and walked away to the gateway before facing me. Cupping his hands to his lips, he whistled. It was his owl whistle, the same low, stuttering whistle he had used to call me when we were walking out together back at home on the farm all those long years ago. Suddenly there was no longer any pain in my leg, and I trotted easily over towards him and buried my nose in his shoulder. "It's him, David," Albert said, putting his arms around my neck and hanging on to my mane. "It's my Joey. I found him. He's come back to me just like I said he would." "See," David said wryly. "What did I tell you? See? Not often wrong, am I?" "Not often," Albert said. "Not often. And not this time."